Hello and welcome everybody to the Wyrd World of Knowing podcast. And very first guest on the show, we have the wonderful Lynne McTaggart. And for those of you who know anything about Lynne, then you know how the depth of detail that Lynne has gone into over 30 years of research, investigative journalism into science and consciousness will know how important this chat is that we are about to embark on and how deeply honoured I am that Lynne is here with me. So Lynne, thank you so much for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Rachel. Thank you.
It's an absolute gift. And I know you've been doing some webinars with, last night it was Greg Braden and also Dr. Bruce Lipton and various other people bringing even more information through for the masses to be able to find out and bring together epigenetics, quantum science, all of the research really that is out there to bring to people who are not quite aware yet of what is actually going on in the world. And there are all these different realities. Now, series 2 here is all about us looking at what is reality and what are these different realities and can they be regenerated into something new? And if so, how many times and what does that mean for each and every one of us? Now, because you've done such investigative work into consciousness and the science, what drove you to actually go on this journey?
Okay, well, what drove me was really an accident. I have co-founded and have edited a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You, which started out as a newsletter for now, I guess, 32, 33 years. And in the course of my research for that, and that magazine is all about what works and what doesn't work in conventional and alternative medicine. Now, this is back in the 1990s. I kept coming across good studies as I was doing my research, kept coming across good studies of spiritual healing and a few other things like acupuncture, but particularly spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, well, if you can have a thought and send it to someone else, which is what essentially spiritual healing is, and make them better, then that completely undermines and changes our understanding of how the universe works. And so I set about trying to figure out why this could be. And in doing so, that journey took me to many frontier scientists at the time studying consciousness research. And I thought it was going to be fairly easy to find out from them, there's such a thing as human energy fields or something like that. That was rattling around at the time. But what they talked to me about, each of them, was through their experimental work, they had uncovered nothing less than a completely new science, a new view of the world. But scientists like that, first of all, don't like to speculate. They don't like to go beyond their experimental data. And also, they talk in code, they talk in math. And so, very shortly, I realized essentially to my horror that if I was going to put this all together, all of their work into some sort of synthesis, it was going to be left to me. So I had to do a lot of study into quantum physics and lots of other things to grapple with and finally put together what they were talking about. And that was the book, The Field. And so that really hijacked me into this work. I started out my career truly as an investigative reporter with hidden tape recorders. My first big story, which became a book, was breaking international baby selling rings.
Wow.
So I have traveled very far from that to spirituality. But I've always been interested in the esoteric. I've always been interested in different views of reality. And this really opened up my eyes to the possibilities and the challenge of a new scientific story for us, because that's exactly what it is. And when I say hijacked, I kept asking questions as investigative reporters do.
Yes.
And at the time, after I published The Field, there was a lot going around about manifestation, the law of attraction. Again, the hard-nosed journo in me said, okay, well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts, or are we talking about just subtle shifts like shifting a quantum particle? So that inquiry became my next book, The Intention Experiment, which also invited readers. I decided it was not just a book, it would be an experiment. We'll find out how far we can take this. And so I started working with frontier scientists working at places like the University of Arizona, Penn State University, University of California, et cetera, to test whether our collective thoughts, lots of people thinking the same thought at the same time, would magnify the effect. And so it's gone on. Discovery after discovery, question after question led me to small groups and recognizing and witnessing the extraordinary healing power of small groups, power of 8 groups, and so forth. So I've been permanently hijacked into this work.
Um, and I really understand what that means, because having gone from a television background myself, where I've met so many inspirational creatives who have created something from nothing in very strange manifestation ways. And it's brought together groups of people that wouldn't necessarily been, ever thought to have been put together to create something really magical for the TV screens. And that's led to BAFTAs, awards, RTT awards, and I've been very fortunate to be in the background supporting that process and helping that more from an emotional point of view, which led me into the journey that I've been on as now as an energy therapist and trainer. And that group work that you're talking about exists everywhere. It exists in all the business world and families, and it's happening all the time. But what you're bringing together with this is a real conscious way, or more intentional way of focusing our intention for us to be able to create something really fabulous from extremes of depths of despair, in a way, really, isn't it? Because some of the experiments that you've done, such as bringing the Palestinians and the Israelis together, that is such a heightened area of people to bring together, that anything really could have happened there. But from my understanding of what I do with therapy work, that when people are in such a heightened state, actually, the therapy work that we use, the spiritual healing, the Reiki, the tapping, whatever it might be, works at its peak, at its best, when that is heightened emotion is all there. And I know that's probably what you've been finding from your experiment. Could you explain a little bit about that one?
Sure. So we have done 41 experiments to date. Everything from trying to make seeds grow faster to purifying water and other very subtle effects on plants, to lowering violence in war-torn areas or very violent areas, including the most violent place in America, which is officially St. Louis, Missouri, and even healing people of things like post-traumatic stress disorder. And of the 40, 36 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. So just by comparison, there's no pharmaceutical drug out there with that kind of consistent track record. But with the peace intention experiments, I've done about 10 to date. One of the most dramatic, or not the only one, bringing disparate groups together was a Jerusalem experiment I did around 2017, 2018. I was fortunate enough to work with special equipment at a colleague's studio, which had the capability of putting cameras into lots of different locations. So we put a camera into conference rooms in 8 Arab cities. So we had cameras in cities in Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Kuwait and Oman, et cetera, et cetera. The 9th camera we put in an audience of Israeli Jews. And I had to be the go-between to set this all up because nobody was speaking to anybody and everybody was wary of the other side. So we did. And we ran an experiment to lower violence in Jerusalem, which was experiencing a lot of violence at the time. So everybody was very wary doing this together. And the camera equipment, the studio equipment was such that I could speak to all of them and they could speak to each other when called upon. So everybody was interactive. So afterward, I started asking people, okay, so how was that for you? And this very wary group started creating a love fest. They started sending, the Arabs started sending love to the Israelis. The Israelis were saying things like, "Your God is my God." And so it went on. I saw the same thing a few year earlier in an anniversary of 9/11. I was very tired of watching those buildings come down as we have done for Americans and everywhere around the world for every single anniversary since. And I thought, let's get another imagery up there. So we did an experiment at the time. It was during the war in Afghanistan, and I invited both Americans and other Westerners, and then also Arabs through this colleague of mine who has sponsored me in many talks in various places in the Middle East, Dr. Salah Al Rashad. He's like the Deepak of the Middle East, Deepak Chopra of the Middle East. So we had lots of Arabs and we had lots of Americans on, and we did an intention to lower violence in the two most violent provinces in Afghanistan going through the war and also the headquarters of the Taliban. And once again, first of all, we had an effect, as we have with everything. I mean, NATO statistics showed that the lower, there was the greatest increase or decrease in violence in those two provinces of any time during the war, and much greater than anywhere else in the country. So did we do this? You can never say for certain. There's so many variables in a war. But what was even more interesting was the Arab response to it, the American response to it. They started writing to each other on my Facebook page, and they started again a love fest of sending love to each other. So we've seen that kind of amazing connection. And there certainly is some good science to explain why. I found it at University of California, research carried out by psychologist Dacher Keltner, who took two groups of students. One batch of students were shown photos of the world's victims, so designed to elicit compassion. The other group were shown pictures of the University of California Berkeley campus, their campus, pictures of their full team winning against their greatest rivals, Stanford University, et cetera, et cetera. These were images designed to elicit pride. And what happened afterward was when Dr. Kettler showed the two groups other pictures, the people who had looked at images designed to elicit compassion were more likely to identify with people who were not like them, as well as people who were like them, compared to the others who only identified with the kind of people they were, students, fellow students, or professionals, doctors, lawyers, financiers, the people they were going to become. So what Keltner demonstrated is when we have compassion, when we do something altruistic, it essentially turns on the vagus nerve, uh, an aspect, and turns on an aspect of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sort of the third level of the vagus nerve is all about connection and love. And when we experience that, essentially the heart is able to leap across the fence. So for me, this was really important because it demonstrated through group intention, large and small, our ability to overcome polarization and allow us to connect with people who are not like us, people, in fact, who are hated enemies.
Absolutely. It opens up this extra sensory perception that so many people haven't yet tapped into. But when they do, it really is it is a love fest as you describe it as. There are feelings of bliss that come with it. I find that people, when they tap into these extrasensory parts of themselves, some parts of themselves will expand, and that might be that their body needs to yawn, they need to stretch, they might burp. Something actually happens with their body, and their eyes might overflow. And I say overflow because people don't actually realize that they have tears coming down their face because they are so full of joy that they don't actually realize how wet their face is, and that their eyes have literally overflowed with really beautiful tears, not tears of sadness and sobs where you feel it, but real just tears of release. Do you find that as well with some of the intentions that you've done? Do you get those effects from people?
Oh, goodness, thousands of them. First of all, we've seen these effects with the big intention experiments. So I survey people after they take part in these experiments just to find out how things are for them. And when I first did it in 2008, I was shocked to discover that I had simply asked to see if people were able to get on their computer because we were running these from my website. It meant lots of people were coming onto the website at the same time. So I read it just to find out, was everything okay for you? And I was astonished to discover that about half of the people were registering extraordinary effects, changes in their relationships with people. Their lives were becoming more peaceful, particularly in the peace intention experiments. They were making up with estranged partners or bosses. They were um, uh, falling in love with people more easily. In fact, as I say, about nearly half said they feel more love for everyone they come in contact with. They were hugging strangers. So I noticed that. But I also, in exploring this more in small groups, which I started in 2008 also, Power of Eight groups is how they came to be known. Again, this was accidental, just during a workshop saying, okay, what if I scale down these great big intention experiments to something much smaller? Let's say we put people in groups of 8 or so, as I said to my husband at the time, and have them send healing intention to someone in that group with a health challenge and have everybody hold the same intention at the same time. And he's a great headline writer who came up with, he said, I love it, the power of 8. And that's how the name got started. But as we've done that, what we've discovered is that people experience a mystical state, as you say, in both the big intention experiments and the small power of 8 groups. We have many people describe big physical changes. They get goosebumps. They get lots of heat. They're feeling almost unbearable heat in their hands if they're sitting together, but also heat if they're, you know, connecting via Zoom and connecting just virtually. And we also discovered that when people are together like that, they will oftentimes, and as I say, virtual or in an actual physical group together, doesn't matter. People will cry, they'll sob, they'll have other experiences too. They will experience an overwhelming sense of oneness. They will talk about having a blinding epiphany of meaning, something immediately makes sense to them. The world and life makes sense to them. And also a great sense of rejuvenation and more. And what I recognized is they're experiencing what the late psychologist Abraham Maslow described as a peak experience, a mystical state. And of course, we discovered this in exploring what's going on with Power of Eight groups. We've put EEG caps on volunteers, student volunteers doing Power of Eight groups, essentially for the first time. And we found very consistently and immediately those students experience a turning off, a lowering to a great extent of the parts of the brain that make us feel separate. So those are the parietal lobes that sit back here. They help us navigate through space. They are dialed way down. And so are parts of the brain, like the right frontal lobes, involved with worry, doubt, and negativity. So though we expected to see that these brainwave signatures would be almost identical to those of meditation, when me and the neuroscientists started studying this, we found it was nothing like meditation, that these brainwave signatures were almost identical to those recorded by the University of Pennsylvania of Sufi masters during chanting or Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer. So what this is a demonstration that when people do intention in a small group, in a Power of Eight group, they enter into a state of ecstatic oneness. And while we've talked about how this works, and I've seen thousands of healings, I've seen in my Power of Eight groups and my Power of Eight Intention Masterclass, my year-long course, where I teach people, but we also put people in groups according to their time zone and their preferred meeting time. And I've seen thousands.
Part of that. I've been part of that this year, and I cannot tell you the depth it gives you. It is like having another family, a family that you do not want to lose.
No, and I think, Rachel, that's the interesting thing about a Power of Eight group is there are many pieces to why it has miraculous effects. And I've seen thousands of healings. I've had two people get up out of their wheelchairs. This year alone in your class, we've had Leandra reversed her leukemia. We've had another woman, Lori, who reversed her eye damage, her retina damage. She was going blind. She now has 20/25 vision in one eye, 20/20 in the other. Um, we've had someone else get over a stroke. We've had uh, people intending for people outside their group and having them reverse cancer. Jay's father-in-law had no other treatment, but his cancer retreated. No other treatment, no chemo, no radiation, no surgery, just intention. His cancer retreated, and much, much more. We've had amazing experiences.
The effects that we've had in our group have been really profound for us. For me, a very personal one was I woke up one morning and my beloved dog was having like a seizure at the top of the stairs, and he was so stiff, and he just literally just couldn't move, and it sort of blanked out, and it was literally half an hour before I was due to come downstairs and do the intention group, and I actually thought, "Oh gosh, this is 15." I thought, "This is it." So I got him downstairs, I got him on the sofa, I'd wrapped him all up, and I was really, quite emotional. We did the intention group, and I mentioned that, "Can we do this intention for Jacob? Bless him." And it was so quick that literally when I an hour later, when I came out of the room and put the collar on to take out our other dog out, he just jumped off the sofa. He just jumped off the sofa, and he's been like a puppy, literally, ever since. And it's 16th year this year. And for me, that turnaround was so quick, but so deeply profound. So, have you had any findings for animals happening that it's so fast?
Oh, tons.
Very, very quick.
We've had so many on animals too, because invariably when the group is meeting for a whole year, as they do with our master class, people will intend for each other, but then reach out to family members or animals in the group. So we've had a woman who had a horse that was supposed to be put down, and the intentions seemed to have saved her life. We've had intentions to find lost cats, and those have worked. We've had so many where animals have been ill. It works just as well. So people say, oh, it's just a placebo effect. Well, it isn't if it works on animals too. There's
Yeah,
something else going on here.
I absolutely agree, and I think my dogs are agreeing as well because they're now barking in the background to say, "Yeah, it's absolutely the case." And I've just wanted to bring forward some events from our group as well to you, because it's not just the physical healings, but actually it's how circumstances can actually change in people's lives. So we set an intention for one of our group who was actually going through a relationship split, and there was an issue with the house. She really wanted that to be smooth, and for the access over the house to be resolved very, very quickly if possible, so that she could have the house, and they could just go their separate ways. Literally the next day, her ex-partner got in touch and said, "Can I come off the deeds?" It was so quick.
I love
And that
that.
compound effect that you're talking about of working together, you start off with this group of people that you don't know, because you put people together who are, we were in the same country, which is great, but we are spread out from all the way from Scotland down south, and I'm in Manchester, so we're all spread out all over the place. And we've even managed to meet up. But through that time of being online every week and following your advice and knowing in our intention group, we wanted to do this work for a year. and would all set a very private intention of actually being with the right group so that we could literally just get on and do this work. And that happened. So within the first couple of weeks, we were setting intentions. We were doing what we tended to do. We were sat doing the 10-minute full intentions. We were getting our wording, helping each other with the wording. And then as we went through your procedure of actually, okay, now try and hone in more on the wording and try and get at least 3 done in that hour. So we were doing 3 intentions within an hour every week and put ourselves on a rota basis. And we were giving feedback at the same time into a WhatsApp group that we'd put, so that as soon as we'd done the intention, we'd put ourselves on mute, we'd give the feedback on WhatsApp so that that was immediate, and then we'd come back and we'd carry on with the next intention. And that's sped things up for us tenfold in that process of being able to get the work done, get the intentions, and keep moving us forward. And that helps so much that we have become so ingrained in each other's lives that we've been helping through grief, through loss of people very, very dear in our group. And we've been setting even daily intentions to help people literally just get through either to a funeral or to the next stage of development, so that somebody could get onto a course to help them move forward and really improve their lives. And this had been for members of their families as well. So there's been huge impact on us being very involved in each other's lives and doing something of such depth that we know works. And it's so profound that we really do wish our families would join in with us. But of course, that's not always the way, is it? So that intention group becomes this family of intentional healing work. That's, are you? So this is the question. Are you now developing something where all these groups, all these intention groups, we want to do more?
And we do indeed want to know what Lynne McTaggart is doing next for her Power of 8 communities. So come back, keep posted, folks, for part 2, where we take a deep dive into more of Lynne McTaggart's work. It's well worth it. See you soon.